for making this time for this session. And yeah, so we just had a round of sharing our, let's say, our well-beings of these days. I just want to start the session with asking, how have you been with the thoughts and with the reflections of the workshop that we had? Did you have enough time to digest the things that happened in the workshop and you learned in the workshop, and did it somehow change you in a way?
I tend always to just keep it happen like on long period. And by the way, I have to tell you that today, after 2 years from my first workshop, anti-racism, I'm doing after 2 years the second one, because it was the suggestion from the people who organize it to say, we do it like now and we wait 1-2 years and we look what happens, and then we do further. And of course, I had a lot of, it was a lot of impact. It was a lot of exchanging with people I don't know their story, and we get to know their stories, and the way everything happened, it's like a lot of things happening in once. And you need, in German we say, muss absetzen, so erstmal. So you need time to just to reflect. And I think this going like beneath and underline, you know what I mean? I'm sorry for my English. My English is not so, I can not express myself perfectly in English, but I will do my best.
No worries. And Alexis?
Yes, I think from my side, I also had time to reflect about lots of things that happened during this time. It was it has somehow lots of things happening when we were there. It was lots of things happening before we were there, and I think that was also very important. And I think I would like maybe to give a little thoughts about that, because when we first start meeting, now I talk about Mohammad, Isaiah, Naomi, and I, with the idea to organize this space that originally was with the title of a conference. Then we decided to call not anymore conference, because it will maybe put us in our mind the idea that there are some hierarchies, like there are like some experts and people that are not experts that are going there to learn. And then we thought about the idea of making it as a festival. Then we thought about this festival as well as a place where we can let a lot of people come and meet and exchange. But then later was also for us important to think about how can we share our stories, how we can share things that are important for us, at the same time that we have a safe space for us. And I think that was quite a tricky thing. And then at the end we decided to have a space only for us, like every person who was taking part in this place was bringing things, was sharing things, and being also as spectators or persons who were participating in invitations from the other people. And that was very, very important, I think. And that's something that I think it's very important to maybe explain that, because that was this first time of the process of deciding, making decisions and choosing what kind of things we want to do, and for a lot of questions that we're trying to solve on our own. So that's maybe the first thing. And then I was not very, it was at least for me a very big surprise. I was not sure what's going to be happening, if it's going to be working or not. As Mohammad said, of course, we were about to meet a lot of people that we haven't met before, but we thought the work they do and the perspective they're bringing to the work they do was interesting for us to see, and they also were willing to come in such a space and meet other people who are working on the same questions, on thinking about possible ways of creating decolonial knowledge, or knowledge that tries to be critical about colonization, or the continuity of colonial thinking, and at the same time this relationship to being not in the city. So what does this thing has to do with our biographies? And that was like something that was very nice, because everybody was willing to work on that level, and we have very different approaches. And I'm talking too much, but I think this is something that is very important for me to say, because this process was not so visible in the time when we were there, because we were a very couple of, like, a few hours together. Like, there were 3 days plan. In the end, we had to make it a bit shorter because of the strike, and then we have to do these other things online. But at the same time, it was somehow there was much work before, and I think there is still much work after that, no? Because we are of course thinking about how we're going to present the things, and I think this thing we're doing now is part of this question, how we can share this experience with other people who were not there, and how can we also give some hints of what happened there for people that maybe behind, like after us, will come and check what we did. So yeah, that's maybe the first answer. Yeah.
Well, thank you for explaining the general process that we've been through, some of us at least, been through. Actually, I wanted to ask your background stories on, like, the motivation or past experience with the space and the institution which had made you join this project, because I knew that you both have worked with ABC, and you were already familiar with the space. So what made you be interested in this project this time?
Should I answer now? I would like also to add what Alexis already said about the process. I think the biggest part was, like, before we met in ABC, and the way we organize, and the idea to just not do it in the typical way, to just go in a way and ask the curators to discuss how I don't know how to explain it, but we had to try so hard not to fall in the way that it usual being done, like just send invitation to some prominent people, inviting them there, and then, okay, we are doing like this post-colonial conference and discussions, and we said no, we want to just start different, and that took a lot of time. It was like we worked on it for 3 months, for 3 months, and the why I decided to just take part, because at the beginning, it was in Germany in 2000. It was 2015. In 2016, I take part in a project, Big Earth, and it's a movie, and it was also like a big thing in my life. I met people from more than 20 countries from the world, and I met a lot of people who are different, but the same way, in a really small place in Hill. And it was like, for me, Big Earth, it's like the Earth is meeting there, and afterwards I had a contact with a lot of people, like Alexis and Christina and Patrick and the crew. And then the idea came from Alexis to say, hey, we are just trying to do something with post-colonial And do you want to take a part? And was, of course, I want to do something in progress. Yes.
I can go further than that. So maybe it's also important to say that this some of the first projects I've been working on in Germany were also in this cooperation projects between ABC Bildungs- und Tagungszentrum and the Huler Medienwerkstatt, where I am now more involved and more working. The Huler Medienwerkstatt is a smaller association, and there's the possibility, like there's of course the idea to make a lot of projects together with a lot of people, but I had the feeling that we needed to go on asking ourselves how can we do our work differently, like how can we gather a certain kind of knowledge that could allow us to understand what can we do differently in the work we do in Huler Medienwerkstatt, and of course in our work together with ABC. And that's the reason why the idea of this project creating invisibilities is I mean, it's also this idea of trying to see what things are or bleiben invisible or are invisibilized. And I would say the first idea was maybe to make a research together with a lot of people and try to understand what is actually this perspective of decolonizing to do with the work we do in ABC and in Huler Medienwerkstatt. And maybe research together whether there are some traces of colonial continuities in the area where we are, like maybe something like a research that have to do with local places, with buildings, with traces of where handle or like how do you say that, commerce or other things or other kinds of production are linked to colonial continuities, especially because we always have the idea, or that was what I was thinking when we think about colonial or let's say differently, when we think about this to be in the countryside, we always think of the countryside as something like a closed world that has almost no connection with the global power relationships. Like if it's like an homogeneous, non-complex reality, and that's what we wanted to also try to question, and because Huler Medienwerkstatt and ABC work in a region that is so-called countryside, where there's a lot of things that maybe have to be said, and that's how we start. Then of course the whole thing developed differently because we were working with people, and people had more interest in trying to see, okay, yeah, that would be a nice question, what is actually around, but as we are going to be here, let's try to see how we can work together in trying to practice a non-colonial way to work together. And that's for instance one of the reasons why we didn't keep the idea of conference, but we changed it to festival. That's also why we try to break a little bit the hierarchies of who is actually like public or audience, and who is actually being the performer or the artist or the expert bringing things. So most of the things were, of course, people were presenting the works or the works in progress they're doing, or they also thought about things they wanted to share with us, but we were all in the space and we were all learning with each other. So that's somehow we also try to break these ideas. Yeah, I think that would be the motivation, and that's maybe also to see how the motivation actually changed into different way, because that was for us also part of the process of learning how to work also in a participative way, and to be able to change directions when it feels like it's right to do it like that.
It is really inspiring to hear that you've like collectively had chosen to work in a decolonial way. Decolonization is such a word that's really widely used, could be used for anything. Sorry, decolonize your body, decolonize your thoughts, like economy. Actually, it's like a verb queer. You can use in many different sections, and you can still find something to unlearn or learn. So it is really interesting. It's always interesting to hear a group of people try to work in a decolonial way, because then I don't know what to expect, to be honest. It's always a specific group makes a certain decolonial way through the process of collectiveness and understanding, basically. So I would like to ask you more about your situatedness or your position in this project, because I know that many artists and participants came from abroad, and you have worked with a lot of different, also German-based artists or Britain-based or Brussels-based, and they're coming from all different places, and this could have been the first time you're working with them. I don't know, but I don't know whether it was the first time or not. So how was the process of decolonizing your working styles or working methods? And what was your position and situatedness in this project, especially in the making of the project? Do you want to go first, Alexis?
I can go first. As I think that's a very important question that we were asking ourselves. I knew, for instance, that my perspective in this project is also linked to the person who I am, the biography I have, and also the body I have, and how my body is actually in this colonial setting in which we're living, read and also treated. The experiences that I do in that regard also makes that important. I also knew, nevertheless, that of course I cannot. I wanted to work with people that have different positions in that sense, and with different experiences that also, nevertheless, are interested in reflecting about that and trying to find ways of work together, and be able to bring other perspectives into the field, into the arena, and to be able to discuss and to learn from. So that's something that I think is very important to say. Yeah. So then, in that sense, I understand that a way of decolonizing our work together is, or for me at least, was to be able to recognize our differences, to be able to see these differences and acknowledge them, and create at the same time as a working space or collaborating space in which people could feel safe enough to be able to share this perspective and to make these differences visible, because they were acknowledged as and also cherished. Let's say it is not only that we are different, we acknowledge our difference, and it's only so when we do this that we can work together. And it's also like being seen and also seeing each other. But of course, it needs to also have the bravery of be willing to show yourself. So that was also a process, and then which of course with Mohammad in a certain way was easier because we knew each other before. We have already worked in different things, and we also share some thoughts in different moments in our lives. So we can say we also have a private relationship. We also friends, and the case with other people that were in the curatorial team were different. So people that I met because we were working together, or people that I met because we were in the activist in activist settings together, and anti-racist activism, and that's more or less how I thought about it, and of course we could have been more, because of course that also, and I think that's also very beautiful, because actually what happened in these days we were working together has to do with, you can see the fingerprints of the creators there, and that was also part of it. I mean, we didn't expect to talk for everyone. We didn't expect to decolonize everything. We just wanted to to dream together and to create a space to work together with people, and that was already for us a great deal of decolonization.
It's yet again really inspiring to hear that the very first rule of decolonizing the working style, or the working, is to somehow cherish the difference, and that was very much shown in the program. I would say it really featured very different spaces, different timeline, a different approach to something that's very personal. It was a ritual, it was a talk, it was a performance, it was poetry, it was everyone's, let's say, everyone's sword, everyone's weapon, to somehow cut down the colonial something weight that they had, and somehow to share the experience of doing that, and share the experience of regeneration and rebuilding something upon the somehow relics, the traces of colonization, and also to heal oneself and heal each other. So I think that was the way that you worked with the people and with this project somehow was reflected on the program itself as well, and that was very touching. So it's very nice to hear somehow that was the thing that you had in mind from the very beginning. And Mohammad, do you also have something to add?
I would agree to the most what Alexis said, but I think one of the most important things also during the process was like when you are just getting the contact with the other people, you just start to reflect on things in your biography. So when we started to talk about the countryside, so I'm coming from the countryside from North Syria, and there were things that I was aware of, that there are a lot of things that I have not reflected, but I know that something wrong went there. A lot of difficulties, like my father didn't speak the Arabic language, and why we are like from the Kurdish minority, and the way my father, by the way, just he's a farmer, and for me he was like one of the greatest farmers on the world, because he knew everything, but this kind of that is not acknowledged, that he knows something, and to go behind the stories of the people on the countryside, and to reflect what kind of structures and hierarchy trying to put people in a side that their knowledge is acknowledged and the other knowledge is not acknowledged. And we went farther when we just talked to other artists, what is behind the language. So when I'm talking to you in English, of course, I'm not feeling so comfortable to speak in English, because English is like my third or fourth language, and my mother language is Kurdish, and that give me like an impulse to talk and to think further about it, to find a space, to find a place, and what Alexis said, to not just to see the differences between the people who sharing this place, but to acknowledge these differences and to be sensitive to it. Like, you know what I mean? And yeah, I think I agree also with you that this all, this all was really so inspiring, and that's why I say I give myself time just to reflect it, to reflect everything happened in a long time, like in 1 year or 2 years, because I'm sure that give you a lot at once, and you need time just to sich damit auseinandersetzen, so, you know, to yeah, to re-instruct everything in your mind, and implant in the mind setting you just moving in the small world, in your own world, where you are just getting in touch with the others, and taking part in projects and programs, and getting taking part in projects where a lot of people are involved. So you learn how to be not just sensitive to the differences, but also to take step back and let the people take also space and feed themselves space, and then everybody can share what they want to share.
Thank you. It was really beautifully put. That somehow made me think that each session had a very, let's say, round, like literally round setting. As I remember, we sat around the table and somehow keeping almost equal distance to each other. And there was not much of the frontality of, there was no stage, there was no podium. Everyone was sitting on the ground wherever they want to sit, and lying down even. And it was a very welcoming and open atmosphere and space to somehow share and take up, as Mohammad just said, take up the space and take up the time, and even thoughts or speech. And I think that's very empowering way to work with, and also to somehow appreciate each other's stories, and also appreciate a form of art. But that being said, you two didn't give a performance or a session. You were the moderator, you were the participant, we all were actually. But if you were to give, if you could have given a performance, a ritual, a talk, or anything that somehow, that you can tell your own stories, because these stories that we just shared here, I couldn't hear it at the workshop. Well, except for the private settings, you know? So if you were to share your stories in the form that we could have taken in the workshop, what would it be? I'm also very curious to see your artistic decolonization. Do you have any ideas, Mohammed?
I think we have already just mentioned that during the process we had to change a lot, because we had some difficulties, and actually we had a session that I had to, I would say, not like to moderate, to discuss with an artist who sadly couldn't take part at the last minute, because a lot of other connections, and you know, in Corona, like online and Zoom meetings, and she thought she would be able to make it and come to Hull, and then we thought it's okay, we can do it also online, but it didn't work. Actually I wanted to not perform or present something artistical, I would say. We wanted to discuss about the language, because the language are, my opinion, had the most impact and influence on my life. So I'm just Wanderer auf Deutsch, so irgendwie. I'm just moving from language to another language, not because I'm willing to do that, but because of external effects leading me or just forcing me to move from language to another language, which is very difficult. And what does that mean? And we wanted to talk, and I wrote some poems. We wanted maybe also to just present poems or thoughts. What happened if I'm forced to abandon a language which is a big part of my life, which is, you know what I mean. So, and how can I protect this part of my identity, which I just can represent in a specific language. So I can talk in German, and can talk in English, and can talk in Arabic, and talk in Turkish. But when I talk, I said, when I talk in Kurdish, which is my mother tongue, it's completely something different. And but when you don't have a space, when you don't have a space to share this part of your identity with others, but that is also a problem. I think that is also a problem which the colonial history has to do with it. So to set a language which is like the main language, and all other language are like countryside language, and you know what I mean. It's just like, it's not like you can publish books in countryside language. You can do it, but it's hard to do this work, and hard to fight to find a place, and to gain the acknowledge of this this kind of books, this kind of stories. Yeah, I think it could be maybe in one other festival. And I want just to add one small point, that we were talking about Alexis, was ist Erbe?
Heritage.
Heritage. So who has the right to just give to give the heritage of the language to the next generation? So it's like, from colonial perspective, if you are living in colonial state, and you belong to this colonial state or this colonial community or land, so you are automatically getting this heritage from language. But the people who don't belong to, they have to first learn, and that is like kind of ambivalent, you know what I mean? And like, you start so behind, so you first have to learn the language which they automatically get it from the birth. And that was also a point which we talked a lot about it, and I think we had a discussion with Azaini about this topic.
I really want to hear more about this. The session that was supposed to happen, I think it should happen in some other opportunity or occasion. I also thought about this, like, language being it's really closely connected with colonial history and also colonial economy. And you just said about something about the province language or the rural language, and it's really interesting how the publication works. I thought that, like, even if you live in Germany, if you write in Kurdish, your book won't be presented as German literature. I mean, it doesn't matter if you are the second generation or third generation, German literature won't allow you to write in Kurdish. And you're not included and sold in the section, you know, the bookshelf of German literature. And the same works here. People living abroad for their whole life, and if they write in Korean literature, they sometimes present it as a Korean literature. the demarcation really strongly lies within the language. And the language also somehow is very closely connected with the economy, as Mohammed just said, that like if, let's say, I don't want to throw any nation under the bus here at the right moment, but you know, I don't know, if you speak Spanish, I wish I could speak Spanish. And that but like, why do we have to long or crave, you know, this kind of some linguistic ability? Because they have built a big colonial nation with their language, so that now everyone had to speak or has to speak in those languages, and many of the minor, quote unquote, minor languages died out, and it is still dying out. So I think it's a really interesting point to, yeah, it's I would like to hear more about it when the time allows.
There was a little conversation with Jaini, and also in that direction we were talking about this idea of heritage, and we also make the distinction at the time of a passive heritage. Mm-hmm. So the privilege that some people have to passively have this heritage and don't need to do anything for that because it's for granted. And we also talk about this possibility of this active heritage, how you actively learn the language that you were supposed to inherit, but you didn't because of colonial because of the colonial system. And then some people do then this active way, and then that's also some part of the discussion we got not only with Jaini but also with Fayo, about this archives that Fayo is working with, and that's of course this idea. Okay, they're not allowed to be, and that's like these archives, these stories are not allowed to be, and that's how the person, like the work from Fayo, it's actually a kind of active heritage seeking. She's looking for the stories, she's looking for the language, she's looking for the songs, and trying to gather them together in an archive that's at the moment an online archive. And that was also like a very, very interesting thing. And so we were, of course, going into many different things, and of course, this all stories are connected to the life stories of all these people, which also makes the whole thing like very beautiful in that sense. Yeah. So I mean, those two conversations couldn't be able to be taking place in situ when we were in Höhl, but we record them and also so online conversations, and we will also post them in our website when they are ready. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But you haven't answered my question yet, Alexis.
Yeah, I know. That's actually it's a very nice question. I mean, I do like to work with audiovisual material, and I've been working in the last years with different communities with reusing archive film material, like found footage, and using them also sometimes to tell our stories with some images that maybe have a new interpretation because we're using now with some stories from some groups and communities. But also sometimes the idea of using material that portrays problematic things, and then actually to make visible how invisible for the persons who were making this footage was to just record these things away, and how problematic this is. That's maybe something I would like to keep on doing and share more. But I have the feeling that already creating a space in which we could be together with the people that were there, is kind of also the kind of work I like to do. So I like to create, like to be, I don't know, to find and I'm learning a lot about it, learning a lot about how to to create spaces that are aimed to be for us. And when we say for us, it's also about the question, who is really going to be invited in that space? Because I don't believe that spaces could just be spaces for everyone, because the spaces for everyone usually are for the same people that privilege have to always have access to each and every space. And so that's something I'm working on, and that's I would say that's part of the kind of artistic work I do, to create spaces and share questions with people, and that, I think that is kind of this curatorial work that we were doing together, because I know that it's not a one person process. Otherwise it would not make any sense, like a lot of sense. But yeah, that's something I and I think it's also in a way very, very decolonial, because we are not used to work in creating places together. We've been always told how different and how away from the others should we be, and yeah, so that's yeah, that's something maybe I can say. That's kind of part of the things I think I could I presented in a way, in a silent way somehow, that this space was already part of the work I do. Yeah.
No, definitely. It's a very beautiful answer. I just asked this question because I also like your audiovisual work. So I was imagining what could have been the work that you, if you have made like a film. I also like your films. Let's not get too personal, but so that's why I want to see also your audiovisual work. But I definitely agree, the space that we've created was also the artistic decolonial process of something, and that's also the input that we're all putting forward. So I think now it's our time to wrap up, but I have one last question. So now we're all in different places, and somehow now I was just shortly reliving the moment that we spent in Höhl, in ABC. And what are you looking forward to, in the sense of like creating this kind of project again? Are you looking forward to meeting the people that we met and going there in person? Like what is your imagination at the moment regarding this project? Can you imagine us meeting there again and having something, some having some unfinished business there? Alexis?
Yes, I can imagine us meeting there. I think that as this process are very long-term processes. Like, I think with some people we talk about this like lifelong learning processes, and they will never stop. And I can imagine very well us meeting again there, and also maybe this time having a bit more time. I mean, I think we learn, at least I think we learn a lot about what we need, what kind of things we need to think and to take into consideration, and how we slowly stop thinking about the outside, which I think it's a very important topic, actually, because we of course we got funding from a Fonds Sociocultur, and at a certain point we were thinking, okay, we should be able to share what's happening here with an audience. And but then of course we thought, oh yeah, but we have to make it clear that it should be for an audience that it also belongs somehow, or also makes some similar experience that we do. So that we thought about the safer space audience, so people that are Black or indigenous or persons of color, or people that have yeah, some kind of experiences in that sense, that have like somehow marginalized because of the colonial structures in which we're living. That was the idea. So people who are affected from that. And at a certain point, we came to the idea, yeah, but it doesn't make sense because we cannot really take care of them. And this place should be about taking care. It's not about that somebody will just look at what we're doing. Of course, now we're going to be sharing the thing, but it would be different because it would be more like an archive. People that can go and look and maybe get in contact with us if they want to talk with us. But we couldn't really have an audience that we could take care because we were, of course, discussed about sensible things that might be also triggering for people, which actually happened a little bit also in our in one of the workshops, and we had at least the chance to be there for whatever we could do on taking care of each other, and that was very hard to do if we have an online audience at the same time. So that was maybe that. Once that's said, I know that when I think about the future, I can imagine this thing happening again. I can imagine this thing happening for us. So I will definitely go with even this imagination to have an audience somewhere, because it's not it wouldn't work for us. It works for the people who are there. But I can imagine, of course, inviting more people, taking a bit more time, and letting us actually experiment with the things we could do there. Yeah, so I can imagine that. I'm not sure if it's in a year basis thing. That's something I can imagine, and probably would imagine something we can do every 2 years, because if it's an every year thing, I think, as exactly what Mohammad said, sometimes we don't have the time to actually understand what happened with us. And it's also for creating for, I mean, we're having actually now a meeting to discuss about what happened in January. So you can see the time is getting like expanded, and I think we need the time also for that. So it's, yeah, there's no rush, let's say, and I can imagine that happening not next year, but the year after again. And I will be very happy if some of the people who were involved want to be there again. And I do have contact with some of the people. I recently got also an email from one of the artists who were in the festival, and the person having their own projects and also want me also to be part of it. So I mean, I think that something happened that is beautiful, and it's going to be and it's important. It should be sustainable, that we can really be able to work together in the long term. So yeah, that would be my answer to that question.
So you want an answer from me as well?
If you'd
Yeah. For me, it was like also a kick-off. So I would say I would really be happy if this keep happen in the future, like to I think I have first to just also set this point that one of things which is decolonial thing for me, to not just set strict goals and you say at this time, at this day, at this hour, we gonna do it once again. I think like Alexis said, because I have also still contact with some artists we invited, and the welling is there. So, and if we took enough time for us to reflect, and if the connection are still there, and I think it is a necessary thing to do in the communities we live in. So we need these spaces, we need these projects, we need this kind of gathering together. We need this kind of asking what is beyond our community structures. We just put it in, and how we can take our spaces, because I think nobody will come and give you your space like just like that. You have also to stay turned. You have and that is not a, that as not a good news, but it is the reality, and it is a fact. So this kind of festivals give me also the motivation to say there are a lot of people just in the same field and trying to link the way um, the way everything is happening in relation to the culture, in relation to the literature, in relation to the politics, in relation to the economics, in relation to appreciating, let's say, countryside or big cities. um, and yes, I would, as I said at the first, I would love to be a part of the project when it shall happen once again, and if not, like similar projects, um, because for me it's necessary. It's something we have to do. We have to deal with it, and we have to just raise the voices and first of all just take our spaces and you know talk about it in safe spaces and in the language we want to talk it, and we bring the translation we have to fight for the financials that we need this, we have to do this, and we need this, and this is a thing which bring us all farther to understand each other, not just like a minority, but to make the minorities more visible in a dominance majority structured system.
I really agree with it. When I was there, I felt it might be actually the first time that I can hear someone's very personal stories, but not feeling that it was weird in a way that nobody was a threat to anyone. I mean, at least we tried to do that, and we were sharing our stories that I would never share with a stranger, but for me, I hadn't met most of the artists, so I felt a little bit shy, at least at the beginning, to somehow talk about myself or my history. But it was a very interesting feeling that everyone could speak about their past, their identity, their stories, and I didn't feel that I would be a threat to someone, and it was also not threatening to have someone in my space or in my story, at least sharing the story. And that itself is already a very emancipatory thing. I think it's like, because we seldom feel the safe space. Most of the people might not even think they're not in a safe space. They take it for granted that they can express and they can be themselves. But I would say that's a very small handful of people who are fitting all the criteria, then they would finally feel it's safe. But actually, if you have one small thing missing, one small thing looking different or sounding different, then you can already feel the space is not really safe for you. But I think that we need this kind of chance to actually feel then what's safer for us. Then what can we feel, and what can we do there? That's a totally different feeling, and I think we should have this opportunities more. And I hope that people who might be listening to this podcast would find their own occasions and opportunities to somehow feel what is the safe space for you yourself and for the people who are in the space. So thank you so much for joining the session and I mean talking with me. It was my first time actually seeing you after the festival, so I really hope you have been doing well. I know it sounds redundant, but I really mean it, and I wish to hear from you in many nice opportunities. So thank you so much for your participation.
Thank you very much, Eunyoung, also for the nicely put way of wrapping up. I appreciate that very much. And I think it's a very nice way to think about this podcast, that maybe some people could feel inspired by the possibility to creating some spaces and thinking about what could that be. I haven't thought it that way, but I think it's really beautiful put. And I think in that sense, thanks a lot also for the interesting questions and helping us also to reflect about what happened there and to keep it somehow, maybe keep some little seeds that maybe in the future could grow somewhere else.
Thank you for recording and doing the podcast. And yes, I hope that, as I said, this proceed and give us and give all people who are interested an impulse to do more. And yeah, I wish you nice day. And may we meet in the soon future.